if you are talking about data across countries, that is, you want data related to different countries, you can always go for World Bank Data Bank. IMF has a very good collection of data. Most of these ministries, if you go to several ministries, you can get reliable data. Okay. The other type of data source is your primary source. Primary source means where you are actually going to the field and collecting your data. We have generally two commonly used methods of collecting data from the primary source, via questionnaires or via scheduled interviews. Questionnaires are when you make a list of questions that you want the respondents to answer, and you give it to them, and they are answering, or they are filling in the answers on their own, right? In a scheduled interview, it is the interviewer who is finding out what the answer is from the respondent and writing it down himself, right? The interviewer himself fills in the answers to this question. It might seem like a very small difference, but when it comes to reliability, scheduled interviews are considered to be much more accurate, because if you send me a questionnaire, I might misunderstand it, I might not fill it in correctly, I might intentionally fill it in wrongly. So all these errors can be omitted and reduced when I'm going in for a scheduled interview, or when the econometrician is going in for a scheduled interview. Okay. The next step of estimation, generally and luckily, we don't need to do it by hand using computers or using calculators, or calculating. We have lots of a variety of statistical packages like SPSS, eViews, Stata, SAS, many more, which can be used to do the estimation, and it gets done in like 5 seconds, 1 minute maximum. Okay. From these examples, R is very important because it's open source. Open source means it's available freely for download from the net. SPSS, eViews, Stata, these are all paid statistical packages. Okay. I have also given for my Keynes' psychological law of consumption. We actually took the data from 1950-51 to 2006-7 from these sources, and we actually regressed for y on the x variable and got this equation, right? If you notice in this equation, the value of beta 2 is 0.63. What this actually means is, in terms of economics, it's my MPC, marginal propensity to consume. So every time income increases by 1 rupee, 63 paise is going to be spent on increased consumption expenditure. The remaining part will be used for increasing your savings. Okay, we'll deal with such equations much more. This is just an example. Okay, once you've estimated your model, comes hypothesis testing. Okay, here we employ various statistical tools to test whether is it just by chance that I got a value of beta 2 or MPC as 0.63, something between 0 and 1, or will it be true no matter how many times I take a sample of data, right? So technically speaking, is MPC statistically less than 1? Okay, that is what we look for in hypothesis testing in this particular example. Finally, once you have got a satisfactory model, we try to use it for forecasting or prediction. So the example I gave in the class was, we know that after the COVID pandemic, economic activity has reduced dramatically. So the IMF says that India's GDP in the coming fiscal year will be lower by 5%. So if we know that the Indian GDP is going to be lower by 5%, and we have estimated this model, we can actually forecast or predict how much will consumption expenditure be lowered by, right? So 5% GDP is lowered by 5%. how much will consumption expenditure fall by. If I know that, you know that there is a negative multiplier in effect. If consumption expenditure reduces, incomes of several people will reduce. If incomes reduce further, the consumption expenditure of the people will reduce, and it will be a negative multiplier effect resulting in recession, right? So because of the COVID pandemic, we can see that the economy is going through a negative multiplier effect. So the government can use such a model to forecast what will be the fall in consumption expenditure and what will be the negative multiplier effect, right? And it can do something to correct it. So whenever personal consumption expenditure, private consumption expenditure is falling down, resulting in a fall in the income levels, the government can step up by increasing government expenditure so as to fight the negative multiplier effect, right? At least to neutralize it. So if we estimate a model such as given in this example, we can actually use it for policy purposes, right? We can find out by how much should government expenditure increase to negate the effect of falling consumption expenditure.